What do we do with the Word of God when we hear something from Him? Well, really what we need to do is we need to act on it. And generally speaking, the things you're going to hear from God are going to relate to the two main commandments that He's spoken to you. The first is that we love Him. The second, that we love one another. And most of what you're going to hear will, in a very specific way, touch on something going on in your life that will help you to do those things. Sometimes it will be that God will simply show His love to you by protecting you or providing for you or doing something in your life that is part of His redemption package. But here's what it comes down to. If we don't act on what God is saying, we're going to miss a lot. Here I was, a young preacher. I was living in Adrian, Michigan, and I had set up a week of meetings in New York State. It was one place after another. And the way it was planned, I was supposed to leave my home at about 6:30 in the morning, and I would drive from Michigan all the way around through Ohio and a piece of Pennsylvania, come up into New York, and I would get there in time for a shower and for maybe a light snack, and then we would have the meeting. That was the plan. But it began snowing the night before. I went to bed early thinking, well, if the roads are bad, it's going to be a long, slow drive, and it's going to be a little bit hard on my nerves. So I went to bed as early as I could. I had everything packed and ready to go. The alarm was set for 6:30, and suddenly at 4 o'clock, I woke up. I'm not a person who wakes up in the night, but I did that night. I woke up, and there was the voice of the Lord, and He said, "Go now." So I grabbed my bags, I went out the door, and got in the car and started driving, and the snow was bad. Well, I was a little bit sleepier than I had hoped to be, and I stopped at a 7-Eleven, picked up a cup of coffee so I could keep myself awake, and kept on going down the road after that. And I noticed that I couldn't feel safe driving much faster than 30 or 35 miles an hour. And this was going to be a long ride at that rate because I had planned to be driving 55 all the way. But at 35, I was going to be late for the meeting if the snow didn't let up somewhere. Well, I turned on the radio to get the weather report, and as I kept driving, little by little, as I listened for the weather, I didn't see any snowfall diminishing. It was just getting heavier and heavier, and the roads were getting worse and worse. And just as I got out of my home county, which was Lenawee County, and crossed the state line and into Ohio, there I heard the radio announcement, "The sheriff of Lenawee County has closed the roads. A traveler's advisor, blah, blah, blah," etc. So I had left just in time. Then as I drove across the north side of Toledo, the snow was still coming down, and I still couldn't go any faster than 30 or 35, and everyone was creeping along. And I kept the radio on, waiting for someone to announce that the storm was starting to blow over, but there was no such announcement. Instead, by the time I'd crossed the north side of Toledo, now it was the sheriff of Lucas County, and the roads were just now being closed in Lucas County. I had just gotten across the county just in time. Well, there were 2 or 3 more of these counties like this. And then eventually the snow stopped coming down, and suddenly the roads cleared, and I was able to kick the speed up to 55 and even put it on cruise control, and I could rest for the rest of my trip. I drove, but it was restful. It was peaceful. It wasn't hard on the nerves. I arrived in time for a short nap, and then I had my shower, and I had my snack, and we had the meeting, and the ministry time in the various stops I had planned in New York. Everything went wonderfully. But see, if I had not acted on what God had said, if I had not acted on that, I wouldn't have been able to get out of my home county. I would have tried to drive away from home, and I wouldn't have made it 2 or 3 miles before I would have been stopped by the sheriff's department and sent back home. And so I would have missed at least the first meeting. Who knows what it would have been like to try to drive the next day. But the important thing is, when we act on the words that God is speaking, He will guide us. He will keep us safe in dangerous times. He will provide for us when the economy is bad. He will fulfill His promises in our lives in a multitude of ways. But the key is to keep our ears open and then to act on what He says. And then besides that, He's also going to cause us to love Him. It's love language. It's not just commandments and you better get with it, buddy, or you're going to be in trouble. It's not like that. No, He's not putting us in trouble. But what He's doing is He's saving us from the trouble that this world heaps on people. Life can be a lot of trouble sometimes, but God walks us through it. And if we go with Him, there's a love language of His grace in our lives. And then He will also lead us to other people, and we will make an impact of grace on them because we've heard His voice. He'll tell us how. He'll show us what to do. That's what His Word is for, is to cause you and me to love Him more and to love His people.